I mentioned you were from Ohio. What were you listening to on the radio when you were growing up?
I was kind of old school. I was young and I was really into talk radio, and none of my friends were. None of them understood why. You go to 5th or 6th grade or whatever, and they're asking you who you idolize, and people would say Bernie Kosar, the Browns quarterback, or this politician, or this, person, news anchor, or whatever it was. And my idol was Joe Tate, who was the longtime play-by-play voice of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I just wanted to be Joe. Joe also did the Indians too, as well, on television when I was a kid. Actually was on the microphone on Channel 43, the local broadcast of the 1981 perfect game from Len Barker. I remember it like it was yesterday. So Joe is my idol, but I was also really into talk radio. My dad was very good friends with the now late Les Levine, who was a talk show host in Cleveland. Gary D, who was also a talk show host, not necessarily sports, because sports was my thing, but I wanted to be Gary too. I used to call his show. I was 12, 13 years old. I had mono once, so I was home for a month, and I just listened to Gary on the middays and called in. So I was this old school kid that loved radio and had that clock radio next to his bed, and I would listen to Joe and Gary and all these people, and I wanted to be in that medium, and I knew that's what I wanted to go to college for too. Now,
very similar to you, I grew up in Detroit, so before I went to broadcasting school, what made me go to Specs is WDFN, The Fan, and we're going to talk about your time there because you were there for a spell. But I think we both share that in common, that we were bitten by the radio bug at a young age as a fan, but sports talk radio and sports talk specifically made us want to get into radio. What was your first job in broadcasting? Do you remember that?
Well, I mean, to be honest, the first job was the student station in Syracuse. So I went there to try out and be on WAER FM 88, which is the same station that brought, Bob Costas to this world, Marv Albert, Mike Tirico, Dave Pash, Ian Eagle, Sean McDonough. The list goes on and on. Wow. And all these guys that you see now, started at AER. So when I was in high school, I had a friend actually in Pittsburgh by the name of Adam Lippard, who was at Syracuse at the time. And when I was looking at schools and said, I can get you a tryout at least at AER, but you gotta make it. You try out, you have a year plus to get on the air and get cleared to be on but I can at least get you a tryout where you wouldn't just be a name on a list. So I got that tryout. So really my first job, even though it was college radio, it was so professional the way they handled us and the way that we did and broadcasted sports, football, basketball, and lacrosse at Syracuse. I was lucky enough my senior year, 94, 95, there was only 4 seniors. Some of the junior class included guys like Andrew Siciliano's at the NFL Network now, Zach Zaidman, who's with the Chicago Cubs, and guy Tim Benz, who's in Pittsburgh. So all those guys were really good juniors, but our senior class was really small. It was myself, who was the assistant sports director, Mike Cranston, who was the sports director, Jeff Millos, and Larry Gato. So there was only 4 of us. So I got to do a lot of games, a lot of football games, a lot of basketball games, lacrosse the year before. So when people say, what's your first job? Well, professionally, it was WHK in Cleveland for a year, but really I cut my teeth at AER. I learned so much. I'm a very active alum still. I donate to the station. I give back to the kids. I sent our Syracuse basketball program, Ron, has been so bad the last few years. The guys didn't get to do an NCAA tournament last year. So I said, instead of the tournament, I stayed in touch with everybody. I sent a bunch of pizzas and I said, just have some food and do it for the staff. And I paid for the pizzas. So it's not something I broadcast or put out on Twitter like, hey, here's what I'm doing. But AER means everything to me. So that's really truly where I believe I got my start.